Hello teacups, welcome back to my channel. So today we're back with Chantal, eating like the 1950s. Now this is an interesting point because when she was back in her diet phase, she had a couple of times where the diet was really wearing on her, and she spoke about wishing she could go back to the 1950s when things were simpler, despite the fact that she hasn't lived in the 1950s. And how, you know, they ate wholesome food and they didn't, gorge themselves on junk food is, I imagine, where her brain's going. She's got this nostalgic idea for a time she's never been in, where she said it before when she's like, oh, I need to go live on an island where I can't do X. I need, you know, when we talk about impatient, it's because people force her not to do Y. She wants to be forced to stick to something, but she doesn't want to be forced to do anything. And it leaves her between kind of a rock and a hard place in many ways. So she's spoken about eating like the 1950s before, kind of the idea of a simpler life. And this is apparently where she's going here. So again, we talked last video, I believe it was, when she was saying before she had a big McDonald's binge, she had started the day with cereal and berries. So I think even with the crap she's been eating, I do think she's still in the back of her mind at least got this, okay, well, I'll start again tomorrow, today will be the day, and then it never ends up being the day. I think she's not showing much of a struggle on camera, but I think she is mentally still kind of there, even though she doesn't seem to be doing too well on it. So let's get into the video.
Hello, Foodie Beauties.
It's a new intro.
Welcome back to another video, guys. Do you like my boho mirrors? I hope you do. They're decorated.
That seems like a weird place to put those. I mean, I don't think anyone has complained about the decoration of her stairway. I think the issue was more in kind of the dining area and where we see her film longer periods of time. So that's an odd choice.
My walls aren't so bare, except like half the house is still bare. So today I have something special for you guys. I've been slaving away in the kitchen like a 1950s housewife, and we're gonna go back in time to the 50s and eat like they did in the 1950s. And the 1950s, I guess it's gonna be kind of stereotype kind of video because you know, stereotypically you would hear that they have a well-balanced meal, you know, glass of milk, a slice of dessert, and, you know, meatloaf or whatever. So
meatloaf or whatever. This is clearly a well-researched video. And actually, this is one of the major issues I have with this video. I skipped through it to see before I started recording. This as a concept, although I think she's kind of doing it for the diet factor, for the fact that it's a simpler life and she just wants to escape her own life and always has, the idea of eating from the 1950s is actually an interesting one and can be taken quite a few ways. She could have looked up a contemporary recipe that she could have followed, and that would have been somewhat interesting content. She did just put a subtitle up being like, don't worry, I'm not going to be eating from any gelatin molds. But there are a lot of recipes she could have followed from then, even if it was a contemporary meatloaf recipe. I get the sense that her entire research on this idea has been half an episode of Mad Men, you know? So she's looking at the stereotype because she can't be bothered to research it. And I'm like, honey, if you're gonna insist on eating on camera, there's a lot of mukbangers out there, yeah? You could find a niche like this. You could make it more interesting, and you can make a little bit more effort in your work. If this is gonna be your work, as much as I wish it weren't, you could make more effort. Even what she's wearing right now, okay, she's saying, okay, it's 50, so I'll wear a red lip and dark eyes. This is an unfortunate freeze frame. Again, apologies. If you ever watch this, Chantal, I promise I'm not doing it on purpose. But she could have said, okay, I'm Foodie Beauty, so before we get into this, I'm gonna look up a contemporary makeup look, or I'm gonna find somebody from that era and I'm gonna copy their look. There's lots of things she could have done to make this, one, more authentic, and two, just a little bit better. And she unsurprisingly hasn't, because she's fundamentally lazy. But I would have loved to see that. Like, if she were to make this a series and say, okay, let's eat from each decade. Do you guys remember? I don't know if it still runs, but a while ago in the UK, there was a series that was either called, it was like 1930s Family or 1930s House, maybe. And it took a family, I'm using 1930s as an example, but every week they changed decades, and they went from, it was either 1900 or maybe they had one in the 1800s as well, up until I want to say the 60s or the 70s. And there was a mum, a dad, and I want to say 3 kids of different ages. And they, for the week, they would live in the clothes, eating the food. The house was designed to be a typical house in that era for their class level. And the mum would have to cook with the machines, and the kids would have to school in that style of whatever the era was. The dad would be off to work. You know, there was a lot of research done, and they had to live that life. Now, I'm not saying she could go that far, obviously, but there's a lot she could have brought into this concept that she's not bringing in, and it's a real shame, because a series like that, saying I'm going to make this contemporary recipe, this is the history, this is what was going on socially, and so, you know, 1960s, 1970s, whenever convenience food started coming in, this is what was available. There was a really interesting series in this she could have done that I, as much as it would have been her eating on camera, I would have been quite interested in watching, and I don't think that's where she's going with it, put it that way.
I'm going to show you what a typical 50s meal would be like, or what we imagine it to be, because of course, I wasn't around in the 50s. Maybe
it was back in the dinosaur times. You can't research that shit.
Some of you were, and maybe some of you can comment and let us know how it really was.
Or maybe you could research before you turn the camera on, and you could tell us how it really was, so it's content.
Alright guys, so I'm going to do my best to do it justice. I baked a cake from the box. Betty Crocker, though, who I think was a 1950s housewife, if I'm not mistaken. And we're going to have a wonderful dinner. So let's get to. Hey guys, hey, how are you?
Did you all see the canned frosting on the side there as well? Like, it's not a shock, but keep going. Oh my God, how much dressing does she? This is a meal, dude. The thing is, you do have this idea of meatloaf being a very old-fashioned sort of meal. Why not follow a recipe? Why not just go research that a little bit, and, you know, maybe ease up on, Jesus, the dressing on that. That looks like she's like poured a yogurt over it. That's ridiculous.
How are you? I'm gonna move you a bit closer. Okay, my kitchen is a friggin' mess. So
we're not worth tidying up.
Fail, typical 50s housewife test right there. All right, so let's see what we have here. Just by Googling, like researching or whatever, what a kind of a typical meal was. I've seen some videos where, you know, they have like a little salad, probably not drenched in creamy cucumber dressing, but hey. And
probably not. I would like to see those videos. Like, if she's saying, hey, I've researched this, which I don't think she has. Like, these are the videos I saw, this is where I got my information. You can do it too.
I'm sure the portions were a lot smaller for the women. I'm sure the men, this is like a man, husband size.
Well, I don't know how much you've got on there, but it looks pretty big, but research it. There must be, governments have now a recommended size and a portion size, I mean, in information. That information must be available. Food history is a thing, you can find it. So there must have been some kind of guidance, especially as if you're talking about the 50s. So we were in rationing for quite a long time after the war ended. So the idea that there isn't some kind of guidance on how much people should be eating for that reason alone, like there must be information there. Like, recreate a portion and be like, hey, look, this was the difference.
So, but I wear the pants in this family, bitch. No. All right. Sorry. I'm trying to act proper. No.
Considering your family consists of you and Pete at this point, you probably do.
So this is 2 slices of meatloaf, peas, which I don't even like, and
but I'll eat them anyway.
Fluffy mashed potatoes with rich brown gravy, slice of confetti cake for dessert with French vanilla icing and a glass of milk, because they always seem to drink milk. They think that very big on getting your calcium so you can grow up strong and join the army. I don't know. So let's have a bite of salad.
I will say, even with this being a lot of food though, the small kernel of truth underneath this is still better than the fast food crap. So at least she's home making this, even if she's eating twice the portion she needs to. Like, this would be ultimately healthier than her eating what she ate in her mukbang, in her McDonald's mukbang. But that's a pretty low bar, let's face it.
You know, as much as I joke around, a big part of me misses that whole, like, wishes I could go back. I'm nostalgic for a time I wasn't even born in, but, you know, everyone had a function. Mothers took care of the family. Dads provided for the family. Everyone ate together.
I think she's nostalgic, like she said, she wasn't in that time. But again, it's a case of she's got this image of the grass is greener, that life was simpler. And the things that she blames for the trouble in her life, like fast food constantly being around her, she's got this image wouldn't exist then. And so it wouldn't have been a problem if she were in a different time. And the problem is the choices she makes. If she is relying on food to fill whatever emotional hole she's filling, like, she would have found crap then. But it would have been less part of the daily life that it is in modern society, probably, yeah. But she has this idea that if I just got away from X, if someone just did Y, if I was just able to Z, my life would be absolutely fine. And I think there are bigger issues going on there.
Meatloaf is tender, savory, fluffy mashed potatoes. Yeah. Let's try the peas with the potatoes.
Why has she got peas if she doesn't like them? Why are peas more 1950s than any other vegetable that she might actually enjoy? I mean, frozen food didn't come in until a bit later, right?
I'm gonna dip my meatloaf in the mashed potatoes. Yeah.
What an avant-garde connoisseur you are.
Another thing that was really different amongst a lot of things, but I was watching a documentary on,
Of course she was,
how there's like pretty much virtually no middle class. Now, this was an American documentary, but how there was no middle class, or how it was disappearing, and we're just left with the working poor. So
Someone help move my history. Was that true? I feel like wasn't post-war really the rise of the middle classes? I mean, in England at least, in the UK, the war was one of the driving factors for the breakdown of some of those barriers. I was under the impression. It's been a while since I've researched this myself, but then I'm not pretending to know, so.
People forced to work for giant corporations and for minimum wage, which is not enough to live off of. So
that's not a modern issue.
You're working and you're trying to get yourself
corporations,
out of poverty,
yes.
but you're just going.
Sorry. Corporations, yes, I didn't mean to talk over it. The idea of bigger companies, but the idea of there being working poor and having to work very hard to survive is definitely something that was around pre-war.
Nowhere. And in the 50s, there was a lot of suburban families from middle class.
The middle class that doesn't exist, that one.
Where a single parent could earn enough to buy a house, to take care of the family. It's definitely not like that now. Both parents usually have to work nowadays. There are exceptions, but sometimes both parents have to work more than one job, you know? But I like that old school music as well.
She can't name any of it. That old school music. Well, there we go. This feels like she's saying, oh, I'm interested in history, the same way she's interested in food. No, that kind of old-timey stuff, that's her interest.
civil liberties were definitely different. So there are some, I mean, there is some progression, but there's also, times just seemed simpler somehow back then, you know? For the domestic life, everyone seemed to just be playing a role, you know? And I think that's why times have changed, because you know, the housewife, we learned more about her as the years went on, and she started to rebel, and she wasn't so happy with her life.
Again, sweeping generalizations. Has she actually just been watching Mad Men? Is this where she's getting all her information? Again, I haven't researched this, but based on general knowledge, I'm under the impression, because women went out to work when men went to war, when men came back, there was a push to get women back into the home, and a kind of presentation of the traditional roles of, oh, look, this wonderful family. And socially, women did start rebelling against that. They had been out to work, and why shouldn't they then be allowed to do it now? And it did, as far as I understand it, trigger a change in thinking and a change in women's rights and women wanting to go out and have these rights instead of just going back into the home and giving everything back over to men. Now, again, limited research, I'm going off what she's saying, but if I, in a very general sense, can touch upon these points without any research, like, what's she doing right now? Come on, there's so much you could have done with this video, come on.
Having to freshen up and look good for the husband, or, you know, just basically just being a robot, you know, just every day, same routine, taking care of the house, kids, and husband. No time to take care of herself.
I think I'm not saying there weren't pressures of being a housewife in the 1950s. I think that's also a narrative that's very much pushed in a lot of the movies that I think she's probably watched to research this. Like, yeah, there would definitely have been pressures, that whole keeping up with the Joneses, but like, sweeping generalizations in this.
Well, I wonder how true that is, you know?
Well, maybe
They look
research and
conservative on
find
the
out.
outside.
I'm sure there's a lot of depth to history that you're missing here. And that's not even counting the fact that so much history is kind of sanitized anyway. So there's a huge portion of history, of black history, of gay history, of lots of different perspectives on history that just don't get the limelight as well. So, like, you know, you wonder if it's true. Go research that shit. Have this be a series.
How many housewives do you think were wearing crotchless undies under those skirts? For the milk boy!
Of course, that's where her brain goes, of course.
That would totally be me.
Really?
Oh, it's lunch hour. Look at the milkman.
That would totally be you. I mean, she likes to give us these stories, but it hasn't been you with the Uber Eats guy, which is the current version of that. So let's maybe put those fantasies away, yeah?
A couple hours later, the Eggman's here, the pool boy. If this were the 50s, I'd be having story times like my milkman lover.
This were the 50s, you'd be the same sad individual you are now.
The peas mixed with the mashed potatoes are pretty good.
Actually, that's a bit of a lie. I think she'd be more ostracized than she is now because she'd have less options to choose to isolate. She would have to go out to do things. She would have to go and get her own food. There are certain things she would have to do. She might not have gotten as big as she got, and she might not have the option to ignore the rest of life the way she does, because having delivery services, having the internet, being more connected in one way allows her to disconnect more in another, in a way that might not really have been possible. But that would also mean that she'd have to face more the judgment of others, especially in a world where appearance is so important, and that may have changed what she did. So to give slightly more depth to that. But yeah, I don't think you'd be living a particularly different life that circumstances and society itself didn't force. Like, you'd still be going out and eating, you'd still be facing these problems.
You'd be really tired by the end of the night, that's for sure, doing all of that. I mean, being a stay-at-home mom I mean, I don't have kids, but just being, you know, stay at home, just overlooking all their duties they had to do every day.
I mean, being a stay-at-home mom now is insanely difficult. So I can't imagine it was easier then. If you were well off enough to have a maid to help you, maybe, but it's man, I'm so good at these freeze frames. It's a difficult life even now with modern convenience. So, but then I suppose expectations in terms of if you weren't working, stay-at-home mom is still hard, but if you had the maid to help you with certain things, you would at least have some balance in that job. But again, it's not what she's thinking. Just let's make some more sweeping statements.
And which a lot of you still do. A lot of you out there to this day stay at home. And there's nothing wrong with that. You do it because you know it's a full-time job.
I love that she says a lot of you stay at home. Honey, you stay at home all day and you don't have that excuse.
That you don't get paid for.
Can I just take a moment, props to stay-at-home moms? Oh, I teach. We've been doing online teaching for a while. We don't know what's going to be happening in the new term, but as much as I don't think it's safe for kids to come back to school, I do feel for the parents because having to juggle your jobs with full-time teaching, there's a reason we're professionals. Yeah, there is a reason it takes a professional to teach children mostly. I know there are homeschooling options and things like that, but I do feel genuinely, like the stay-at-home moms I do know, even though one of my best friends is a work-at-home mom and trying to balance her two boys and doing her actual job. The family wasn't set up for it and it's so difficult. So shout out to you guys. As hard as teaching is, I know suddenly being thrust into the role of teaching without the preparation and without knowing what's going on and still trying to balance your jobs and still trying to balance, even if you don't work, trying to balance home life, always having them in and supervising them. It's a hard gig and you do it to the best of your ability.
And I just hope the husbands in the 50s showed some kind of recognition for the hard work that their wives did, but I don't think they did.
Chantal for social justice.
I'm sure some were wonderful, but there's an exception to every rule, right? But like, yeah, best meatloaf.
That is gonna hurt her
Just put
stomach.
like 2 eggs, half a cup of breadcrumbs, and 2 pounds of medium ground beef because it's moist with the fat content.
Again, that freeze frame. She has said multiple times that the higher fat content gives her the shit. So she's going to be in the bathroom the rest of the night. I don't know why she does this to herself. She says, oh, it's more tender, it's more whatever. She's adding other stuff to that meatloaf she could do with a leaner cut that doesn't hurt her stomach. But she never does, so there we go. She's a connoisseur.
I got gravy on my shirt. Better take it up to the sewing room.
Why would you take a gravy-stained shirt to a sewing room when you could take it to the laundry? Explain to me, please. It doesn't have a hole in it unless your gravy is acid.
But I also put a pack of Clubhouse meatloaf seasoning.
I have nothing to say. I don't know if that's good or bad or what.
It's so good. You can also put...
Follow the recipe? I mean, if it's seasoning, I'm guessing it's what? Onion, salt, garlic, some kind of herb.
Need more gravy.
Oh, that gravy is going to be cold and congealed at this point.
But I love gravy.
Oh, you drink it often enough.
Oh my god, this is so good. What are we talking about? You can also use like Lipton, or is it Knorr?
In my head, she said Lipton, and I was like, Lipton iced tea. In meatloaf. No.
Knorr. Brand.
Man, this is not a good angle for her at all. The camera's cutting off her hair slightly. so we're not seeing a lot of it. I am going to put in quite a hilarious shot she put on Instagram though. Like, you know when we were talking about catfishing photos the other day? This is what she looks like, and I'll put in somewhere the picture she put up on Insta.
French onion soup mix. So good. Or you can just put your own. Yeah, I would not survive in the
coffee.
50s.
I mean,
As a house.
generally she's barely surviving in the 2020s, so I mean, hashtag 2020, we're all barely surviving. But in terms of living life, if she can barely get around her kitchen now, I can't imagine it'd be easier for her then.
What?
But again, you could argue that maybe she wouldn't have gotten up to the weight she got up to were she living that kind of life to begin with. So in terms of lack of availability of some of the stuff that really balloons you up and having to make more effort in your day-to-day life, less convenience.
For sure. Because isn't it like forbidden for women to like
All this research she's done.
acknowledge that they have bodily functions?
We'll just keep my face here like this, shall we? This will be my thumbnail. It's polite not to acknowledge a lot of bodily functions. That's definitely a thing, but I hate to break this to you, sweetheart. That's kind of a thing now. Because when she says bodily function, she's talking about farting. She's always talking about farting. So it's considered polite in modern society, maybe not to do that too much anyway. So there we go.
Like if you fart in front of your husband, you get served with divorce papers.
And she's obviously being idiotic here, but Jesus. I mean, really, she's such a child. When it
They
comes
had
to this
instructional videos back then on how to be a lady or whatever.
okay, that would have been a wonderful element for your video. Take a clip, maybe in terms of you getting ready for this, you could have taken a clip from that and been like, this is what the 1950s said. Oh, let's do this. And it maybe would have been an interesting start. I remember watching one of those actually at some point, and it was talking about how heavier women shouldn't wear bright colours, and it's like, oh no, leave those reds to your slimmer friends, and stuff like, she's wearing red now, but stuff like that. That would have been an interesting factor, and like, we're going to do this 1950s style, so let's have a look at the style, let's have a look at the makeup, let's have a look at the food, and you could have had clips interspersed. It would have been work, but man, it would have been better. I feel like she should pay me for a consultation right now.
Fail.
In so many ways.
Well, it'd probably be good in the way that
In a way that...
I love food, so you're constantly be cooking. Oh,
I don't think she would respond well to somebody else controlling the home budget when it comes to her and her food.
I don't know. Fat phobia was even worse back then.
I'm saying this without research, so excuse me if I'm wrong, but I think because the level of fat you're talking about wasn't as common in society. Like it was more noticeable because it was more unusual. We've gotten fatter over the years. So yeah, I guess people would judge it more because it was more surprising, and it did genuinely take a bit more effort to get that big at those times.
I probably wouldn't even be married.
Let's be kind and say we simply don't know. There's someone for
Who
everyone.
knows?
Although, let's be serious for it. Oh man, I'm going to do a compilation of these. Let's be serious for a minute. It's a little bit sad that even in her imaginary life of the better time, she's sitting there going, oh, I probably wouldn't even be married. Not so much, I don't think anyone needs to be married. I'm probably going to be single my whole life. I'm not very good with the idea of marriage. But she obviously wants to be in a relationship. And I don't know, there's something very sad that even in a fantasy, she doesn't think she'd manage it. And to Pete's.
Yeah, the cake. I'll just put a piece of cake for my video, but it's still cooling off.
One of them just farted or had a really loud stomach rumble. I don't know if that came up on camera, but one of them did.
I have to ice it.
Oh my god. You're a disgusting human being. Well, because she chose to leave that in. That's the thing. I'm not saying occasionally a burp doesn't catch you by surprise. Cut it out, you hideous woman.
Hey.
You're gonna say hi to the people?
Hi, people. I apologize for her.
I do not accept your apology.
I'm acting like a 50s housewife today. How they eat.
Oh, did 50s Housewives belch words?
Yeah, they were known for that, right?
If they do, they get divorce papers. Right?
Unless their husbands are cool. But no husbands were cool in the 50s.
You didn't do divorce, you just did miserable marriage.
Saving my milk for my desserts. I don't like just drinking milk just like that, so.
To be fair, I don't like it either. There are certain things you drink milk with, milk and cookies, that kind of thing, but I don't like that it's been sitting, just going more room temperature by the second. If I have milk, I want it to be ice cold. Milk makes more sense with the cake. Can I also say I'm slightly offended that her cake is a box mix? She's a foodie after all, you know? Box mixes in general, and I do realize that people grow up in different ways, they have different experiences, but I grew up cooking in my family, and actually some of my earliest memories are sitting at my grandfather's, in my grandfather's flat at his kitchen, because he always used to cook with my sister, and him having like a cake bowl between us and us baking together. So I realize not everybody has that in their history. It's a different type of culture everywhere. But I think if you're gonna have a box mix, most box mixes you have to add eggs and an oil anyway. So if you're gonna do that, may as well just measure out the flour and sugar and be done with it, just make it. Baking from scratch, you have to be precise, but it's not that big a deal. I fundamentally don't understand box mixes unless you're either in a real rush, but it's only a few minutes more, or maybe you're cooking with a child and they need something easy. It's maybe a starter kit. Sorry, that was a bit of a side
I think I would
rant.
have had a piece of bread and butter too. In the 50s.
Is that just your way of saying you want a piece?
Dry. I don't have any bread.
I don't know if that's true, but why does she think that?
I have butter, but no bread.
It's still on her chest. Or is that a freckle?
boys. Not yet, Sam.
I'm not going back to check, but it looks like she's still got it on her boobs.
If you don't eat all your food, you can't have any pudding. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat?
I don't think you were ever in danger of that, let's be real.
Now it's time for dessert.
Take a breath, you haven't even finished chewing your meal. Yeah, it's a box mix,
Yummy.
whatever. It's a box mix with a pre-made frosting, come on.
Yummy, yummy. And a glass of milk. Crumbly cake.
Have an orgasm.
Shh, I said, shh.
For the record, the cat. For the record, like, cake mix is, like, in terms of taste, is fine. It's not worth this. Yeah?
Shh, Sam. Sam?
Oh, that meatloaf is in the background as well, and the cat is just there. This cat goes and sniffs that, I'm gonna be very sad.
Oh no. No, no, no. Oh yes, angels sing.
I have a shitty box mix. Make your own cake, it's not hard. Just follow a recipe. I'm watching that cat in the background for the meatloaf.
Hark the angels sing.
Would you shut
I
the
don't know the
fuck
song.
up? It's not that good. Especially like the box mix might taste fine, but pre-made frosting has a weird flavor to it, like a weird aftertaste, I find. But I might just be thinking of the white vanilla one.
It's just a box cake mix.
So why are you reacting like this? Just shaking her boobs a little bit.
Hi, Sam.
My camera cuts off at about 43 minutes, so I'm hoping we can get through this end bit before it does.
I mean,
So she stops talking.
I don't really know really how it was in the 50s.
If only history went back that far. If only there was some way to find out.
But I just tried to eat, replicate a typical meal.
A typical meal that I don't know.
Which, like I said, would be much smaller portions, but...
Again, go look at portion size. It's a good rule for life. This is all this is. Jesus, calm down, woman. I hate that sound she does.
Oh. Absolutely delightful. Sam's appearance means it's time to end the video. I hope you guys... Sam.
At least it didn't go for
Please
me.
wait till I'm pretty much done eating.
Pretty much done. What are you eating next?
Okay guys, I hope you had a wonderful time watching my video. Thank you for joining me for dinner. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.
Okay guys, I cut out the stupid face because she's still trying to make fetch happen and I refuse to give her credence for it. And we'll continue to cut out those stupid faces so long as she keeps trying to make it happen. That's where we are. I think in terms of this being a mukbang, okay, it is what it is. Home cooked food generally is better than pre-bought junk. So this would technically be above the McDonald's mukbang, but as I said before, very low bar. I feel like it's a wasted opportunity in terms of a mukbang series. I really wish she would have researched this and it could have been at least quite interesting for the viewer if she said she's going to do it, but she started being like, I'm going to look at the stereotype because essentially I can't be bothered to research, and at the end she's like, yeah, I don't really know if this was 1950s, I've just put on some red lipstick and eaten meatloaf. So I think there was a lot more she could have done, and if she's going to continue mukbangs, I think it would be interesting to have a series like this. As I said, I think she is still, weirdly, in her own special way, trying to look for healthier options, because the whole idea of the appeal of this initially to her a couple or 3 weeks ago was the fact that it was kind of a healthier way of eating, the nostalgic life of being a healthier time without really having to do any of the work of checking like the calories, the fat, without the awareness of nutrition that we necessarily have now, and without the effort of calculating it. So we'll see where her next video goes. I don't know how long these mukbangs are gonna last. Sometimes she's in that for a while, sometimes she can't sustain it for that long. We will see. She seems pretty comfortable in it right now. And when she updates, I will be here. Speaking of updates, Amber Lynn has just updated and I'm debating maybe doing a react on that. So you might see that later if I end up having time and inclination. I did mean to react to her when I started this channel and I didn't end up doing it because of everything that went down, but I'm interested in the new place she's in and in her new life and everything, and she says she's going to start vlogging regularly again, so I might start doing that. I'll make that decision and you'll see it on channel if I do, but thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.